Hi, this is Mr. McGinnis here. Today we are going to be learning about how to write a reflective essay. Check out the board over here. How to write a reflective essay. Student will be able to. Check this out over here. We got our basic objective, which is to write informative and explanatory texts to convey complex ideas, concepts, and info clearly and accurately through the effective selection, organization, and analysis of content. Seems a little hectic, but there's not a lot going on right there. All we're looking for is how do you choose which details to write about and how do you put them in a structure that makes sense. Nothing to be afraid of. Just like the reflective essay, it's nothing to be afraid of. Honestly, if you're writing a reflective essay, you've already done 2/3 of the work just by living it. And that's the beautiful thing about the reflective essay. There are 3 basic parts to the reflective essay. Number 1, the event. Very simple, and do not be intimidated by this. If you're writing about it, it's already occurred. This is what actually happened. This is something like, I was walking through the park and my dog pulled on the leash and pulled me down the sidewalk. This is the, my little sister was born. This is the, we moved. I went on a trip. I was in a car crash. Anything like that. It's an actual event that occurred already. In this first part, this is going to have your sensory details. We've talked about that forever. Y'all are great at this. This is things like, taste, touch, smell, sight, taste, touch, smell, sight, and taste, touch, smell, sight, and edit. All right, so you have your 5 sensory details, which we have covered until we're blue in the face. Taste, touch, smell, sight, and sound. You want to describe when your dog pulled you down the sidewalk by the leash, the way the sidewalk felt. It would feel a very certain way. You want to describe the way that when you moved, what the sight of those boxes are. You want that image, the moving boxes. You want to describe when you were in that car wreck, what it sounded like to have your tires squealing and hit that tree. Those are all sensory details. Nothing scary about that. You all have done it before. You all are great at that. Next up is include the setting and the key players and all that kind of stuff. And what that means is basically your story did not occur in a vacuum. It occurred out in space. Or it did not occur out in space. It did not occur in a vacuum. You are not an island. Your actions occurred in an environment. Your dog pulled you down the sidewalk in the park or in front of your house. You moved from one neighborhood to another. Or you wrecked your car on a windy road, right? I need to know where the event occurred. Very simple. Key players. The dog example, it would be the person and the dog. In the moving, it would be your family, the movers, the people who sold the house, the people who bought the house. Any of those people are key players. These are the people who have something to do with the story getting mixed up, right? So that's your first part, your event, what actually happened. The second part, the reaction, also very simple because you've already experienced it. It might take you a little bit of time to formulate it into words, but you've already done a lot of the work simply by experiencing it. This is how you felt initially, and what was your initial response when the event occurred. You know, maybe you were angry at your dog. Maybe you were disappointed about moving. Maybe you were frightful when you were about to wreck your car. Any of those things. This is in the moment. This is as the moment occurs or immediately after the moment. You want to make sure you get your emotional details. Just like we have sensory details in part 1, you want those too, but at this point, reaction is you. So you want your emotional details put in there. This is a lot of room to get a little bit creative. But the fact of the matter is it has to be that raw response, that immediate response. your last component, and this is what makes it a reflective essay and not a descriptive essay, is the reflection. What this talks about is time has passed, and you're looking back, and you need to figure out what you've learned. Now, that might take a lot of different forms for different people. You might talk about, the way that the dog pulling you down the street taught you need a smaller dog, or maybe taught you that you need to learn more discipline with your dog and with yourself. Maybe moving taught you that you need to be more open to new experiences and places, and you need to be able to adapt to new environments. Maybe wrecking a car taught you need to drive more slowly, but also taught you that wrecking that car has something to do with other people, and it's not just a selfish thing to drive fast. The key component there is that you reflect. That's the most important part about that. What we will be using the reflective essay for is we will have computer lab time, and once you get into the computer lab, you need to go ahead and sign on, obviously. You need to sit down, make sure you pick somewhere where you know you're not going to be distracted by your peers. We have one day to get this reflective essay turned in, and you're going to go through, and just like always, you're going to create a document in Google Drive, same way we did for the graduation paper. And then you are going to share that out with me, Mr. McGinnis, and you all know my email address for that. If you don't know it by now, ask your neighbor. Everyone knows the email address. So you share it out with me, and then you need to go right to work. And what you're going to be reflecting about is going to be things like, while I was working on this graduation, or not the graduation paper, but while I was working on this project, my end of year project, the event was Mr. McGinnis assigned it, obviously. That's already occurred. So describe what was going on with that. Describe what the expectations were. Just lay the field, set up the setting. After that, you need to talk about your initial reaction. I didn't think I could do it. Mr. McGinnis is being unclear. How am I going to be graded? Any of those things that are going through your head initially when I'm like, oh, hey, we're working on this project, that needs to be in the reaction. It's part 2. You take your time with that. Part 3 is you need to discuss, looking back, what have you learned? Is it that you are better with projects than you anticipated? Is it that when you work in groups, you need to take a leadership role in order for things to go smoothly? Is it that you need to not procrastinate, or that you need to ask for clarification when you're confused, or you just plain old need to spend more time working on your projects? Very simple, straightforward assignment. I would expect, we're going to take most of the class period for this. I would expect you to be able to go to the computer lab, sign in, get the Google document created, and your event reaction reflection worked out real quick. If you think you're going to have an issue doing that in one class period, you need to spend a little bit of time maybe handwriting out what you're going to be working on. And then you just type in the lab. But that's on you, and that's at home. But in class tomorrow, we will be working on the event reaction reflective essay. Again, this has been Mr. McGinnis. I hope you're well, and happy Friday.